9:19 is where we're going to start today. In chapter 8, we had this issue of, well, actually, chapter 8, 9, and 10 all deal with the same issue. It's the issue of misuse of Christian freedoms. He talked in chapter 8 about the stronger brother and the weaker brother. The stronger brother felt like it was okay to do certain things regardless of what other people might think. He had Christian freedom to do anything he wanted to do, he thought, without limitation. And there was he was called the stronger brother. There was a weaker brother that also was a Christian. He also had an understanding of what Christian freedom meant, but he thought that certain things were sinful, that the other guy did not think were sinful. And so the whole message that Paul had in that chapter was that the stronger believer should forego his Christian freedom in order that he would not cause the weaker brother to stumble, not cause him to be in violation of one of his beliefs. So he said you ought to forego your belief to not infringe on the other guys. Right. Then we got into chapter 9, and Paul made this case for being an apostle, and as an apostle he should be able to receive financial gain from the work that he did. The thing got started by some people doubting that he was really an apostle because he was refusing to take pay. Sounds like a good deal to me. If you're a church, you got a guy working for free. But he makes this big case, and it's ironclad. It's an excellent case that he lays out here for having a Christian freedom. He is an apostle, but he also, if it goes with that, he has the Christian freedom to not have to take pay. And that's where we ended up last week, and we ended up at verse 18, so we're going to start with verse 19. So let's start right there. And verse 19 through, actually there's two sections here. Let's look at 19. Verse 19 says, though, this: though I am free and belong to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. Okay, I make myself a slave to everyone. We have to be clear about what Paul means. He says he will do anything, but he will not break the law of Christ. All right? He will not break the law of Christ. Paul is free to do whatever he wants, for he is not a slave and he belongs to nobody. If he belongs to no man, it sounds like he's free to do whatever he wants, right? If you're a slave, you've got a slave owner, you got to deal with him. If you're free, and he's free in every way, he's a free man, not a slave. He's free in Christ to do anything he wants. How can he be that free? He can come in and amongst them. He can say what he wants. He can do what he wants. He can preach when he wants. He can preach what he wants. Why has he got no limitations on him?
You don't get paid.
All the same kind of free. Not paid. Paul says he forgoes any right he has that he has to forego to win as many as possible. Is that in there? I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To win, to provide salvation, to get people saved. To win as many as possible through his preaching. And what might he have to forego? Let's see what he might have to forego. Let's look at verse 20. 20 through 22, I think it is. Let me read 20 through first part of 22. This is all about building rapport. You know what rapport is? It's what you build on if you want to establish a conversation with somebody. Okay, for one thing, and there's other things too. Let's listen to it, 20 to 22a. To the Jews, okay, he just said, I make my slave to everyone to win as many as possible. Then he says in verse 20, to win the Jews, I became like a Jew, to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. And the first part of 22 says, to the weak, I became weak to win the weak. Sounds like a lot of hypocritical talk, right? I'm just going to be hypocritical on all these matters. It's not what he's talking about. When he says in verse 19, he said, I make myself a slave to everyone. He's trying to be all things to all people, is what it sounds like. To the Jew, I became like a Jew. All right. There is nothing wrong. The Jews keep the law, right? There is nothing wrong with keeping the law, as long as you're not relying on the law for salvation. So if he's trying to win a Jew, and the Jew wants to go to temple, he goes to temple. If the Jew says it's Passover, I want to observe the Passover, I'll observe the Passover. Then he says, he talks about those under the law. The Jews are under the law, but there's another group that is under the law. It's proselytes. It's converts to Judaism. It's God-fearers. How do you define what a God-fearer is? It's a person that is not Jewish, that keeps the law. Keeps the law. But he's not Jewish. To those, he acts like those that are under the law. He lives under the law. Then he talks in verse 21, he talks about the Gentile. He says, I became like one not having the law. The Gentiles did not have the law, not the Mosaic law. They're Gentiles. He says, to them I became like one not having the law, while with the Gentiles, he will live like one who is not under the law. He will keep Gentile practices, whatever the Gentiles are doing. Now, the Gentiles that he's talking about are there in Corinth, and what are they? They're more than just Gentiles. They are pagans. They are pagans. So to win a pagan, is that saying I become like a pagan? Not quite. It means I'll maintain pagan practices. I'll eat pork. That's what they eat. Paul used to wouldn't even want to smell it. He was so Jewish. Now he's free, and if I have to eat pork, it's not illegal for me. It's not ungodly for me. It's not sinful for me. If I need to do that, I'll do that. Then there's this other group that you can relate to. It's called the weak. The weak. It's the same weak like we talked about the weaker brother. It's just the same thing. This is the same as the weaker brother in chapter 8, verse 9. It does not yet have full understanding of freedom in Christ. He's the one that felt like it was sinful to eat meat sacrificed to idols. Paul says the stronger brother knows that it's not sinful, and he needs to overlook it and forego his own freedom in Christ to support the weaker brother. And Paul's saying, I become like the weaker brother. Paul has a full understanding of what freedom in Christ means. So I become like the weaker brother. I forego my rights that I might give him support if I need to get him saved.
Now isn't the idea that if it's the weaker brother, that weaker brother is already won over?
I'm sorry. He's like the weaker brother. He's not won over yet. The weaker brother in chapter 8 was already won over. The guy he's talking about here is weak in his beliefs. He may not even have any beliefs. Paul wants to get him saved, and so he will become like him to whatever extent he has to. He'll forego his own rights to support this guy and get close to him so that he can get him saved. And what all these cases do, I want you to remember this, it builds rapport. If Paul went into a Jew trying to get him saved, and the guy said, he goes in, he said, I knew it was going to be lunchtime out here, so I knew you weren't going to be serving pork, so I brought some pork sandwiches I'm going to eat. You know, I know it's against what you believe. He's not going to be establishing much rapport with that guy. So all these things that I'm talking about are in the process of establishing rapport so that they will listen to what he has to say. Okay? So then the second part of verse 22 says this. I have become all things to all men so that by all possible means I might save some. I've become all things to all men. I've become all things to all people. It goes without saying that anything Paul does to get these various groups saved will not lie outside of the law of Christ. He will not deliberately sin. He will always love God. He will always love his neighbor. And he will always live by this, self-abnegation. He will always live as if the other guy's rights are more important than his. Those are the only boundaries he has in witnessing to other people. He'll be all things to all people with those limitations. Okay, verse 23. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessings. Paul understands rapport. Talking with her, I got the feeling that one of the things y'all talked about was how to get to a point where you could talk about evangelism with somebody. You don't just knock on somebody's door and say, hi, I'm here to get you saved. You are going straight to hell. You are going to hell if you don't talk to me. You're going to get the door slammed right in your face. But you have a chance if you can make friends with the guy first, have rapport. Well, Paul understands rapport, and that's what he's talking about here. Okay, so you don't do that. I was hoping I was right. Okay? But rapport is required always to have any kind of feeling of being able to get down the road on it. So he will do whatever is necessary to establish rapport to get as many as possible or some saved. Okay? He will receive a blessing in the process. Okay, now we got some interesting lessons and some interesting verses. Verse 24 to 27. Run the race to win. We just finished the Olympics, or we'll be through with it tonight. What perfect timing. We are finishing the Olympic Games. Second in importance to the Olympic Games at the time of Paul was the biannual Isthmian Games. Isthmian. Isthmian. Try saying that. Isthmian Games. It was a biennial, every 2 years. It was 10 miles from Corinth. It happened in 51 AD. Paul was in Corinth from 50 to 52 AD, so it was going on while he was there. And there were 6, so that might have been why he chose some of these metaphors that we're going to read about here in a minute. But there were 6 games, or 6 events: wrestling, jumping, not that kind of jumping, I think it was long jump, high jump, that kind of thing, javelin throwing, discus throwing, running, and boxing. We're going to see running and boxing Paul refers to in these scriptures. And what was required, and all that was required that I was able to read, was strict training for 10 months before the games. So probably wasn't worldwide. It wasn't like, we'd have to have, you got to have more requirements than just that in modern day, today. Now we have all these Olympic trials around the country for every event. If it's the Summer Olympics, they have run all these races, and colleges have all these Olympic trials. narrowing the field down, getting it down smaller and smaller and smaller until it leads up to the Olympics. And then in the modern day Olympics, you even have heats. You got to get it down further and further to get it down to the final. You get the final 6 or final 8 guys to run that race. Okay, Paul says, oh yeah, and the winners of the events receive something everybody wants: a crown made of celery, or a crown made of pine. Very, very perishable. Not a gold wreath, not a gold crown. It's just glad you're here. You get your reward, and we only giving out one. That celery is hard to come by, so we don't make that many wreaths, crown. That's the background. Let's look at verse 24. It's a perishable crown. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. In a race, all runners run. That seems reasonable. They run, or they do the other 5 events. They box, they throw a javelin, whatever, or curling.
Yeah.
Hey man, I'm telling you, I'm a fan now. I know nothing about it, except, by the way, you were in here last Sunday and you were talking about after class. You were talking to Wayne, talking about getting it to curve a little bit. I watched those guys get that thing to curve quite a bit.
Yeah, you can.
They put it on there. You got to know how to do that. I'm sure
Yeah.
you just don't go out there and do it. Yeah. Okay, so you got curling, you got all that other stuff. You got cross country skiing. That was one of the most. Did you see that? The 2 girl teams.
Oh no.
We won the gold. I saw the end of that, and I wanted to cry with the girl that won it. It was the Americans. They never had won it before. Won the gold, and it was apparently the team relay, and however far they came down the list. That was exciting. Okay. All right. So you run to win, and he said they only have 1 winner. Now we have what? 3 winners in these big, just about all sports. You get gold medal, silver. You get first 3 places get paid. Even horse racing. You got the ones that are important. First three finishers run to win. Paul reminds them that only 1, or in our case 3, can win the prize. So run to win. We give out gold, silver, and bronze, and it's real gold, real silver, real bronze medals. So they got celery. I thought that was so funny. I never heard that. Celery or pine. You better spray that with some kind of shellac or something if you want to keep it for a while, because it's not going to last till you get home. Okay, so at the Olympics, you get 3 places. Today, just to be there requires strict training, but that is not enough, right? All these guys train in the Olympics, for the Olympics today, but there's so many rules around the country, just for the American team. You got to get through all these different levels of competition just to get to the last level of competition, which is several more levels that you got to get through to get to the finals. Okay, there are rules that everybody has to determine who will have the honor of competing for their country. Then when the games finally come, listen to this, when the games finally come, the Olympic Games, the guy who is not favored says, I'll give it everything I've got. That's the best I can do. And what does he say? I'm happy just to be there. Right? And that's true. I would be happy just to be there. It would also be, you would be witness to a miracle if I was ever there. Okay, so the guy or gal who is favored sounds totally different in the way that they talk about it. They're liable to say, if they win this year, they're liable to spout off and say, I'm going to win 5 gold medals next year. next time. Remember that? Schifrin, was it Schifrin that said that, the girl? She won the gold last time. She said, I'm gonna win 5 gold
Okay.
medals. What I have understood in all areas of life, we should focus on the training, not on the crown. The crown takes care of itself, right? Focus on your training. Crown takes care of itself. All right. We're looking for, now we're looking for the theological or spiritual application from Paul. So since more than one has to win the prize, Paul is talking about when only, he says only one can win the prize that he's talking about. He's got to be talking about something different than one. We're talking about spiritual truth here, so it's like God doesn't let one man win at anything. I mean, he's concerned with mankind. He wants all of mankind to come to him. So it has to be something more than just one winning the race. So let's see what we can come up with. Verse 25 says this: everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last. It's imperishable celery. But we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Strict training is required. That's what he said. And that's what I read for the Isthmian Games. All you gotta do is train for it. You train hard for 10 months, whatever it was I said, and you can compete. Strict training is required. What does strict mean when it comes to training? It's relative. Strict is relative. That's all I'm willing to do. That's as strict as I'm willing to get. Whatever it is I'm willing to do. Babe Ruth, how strict was he with his training? You remember how he lived his life?
He didn't have strict training.
For him, it was pretty strict. He said, I got to drink 5 nights a week, and I got to smoke a whole pack of cigarettes every 2 hours. Okay, so he didn't even think he needed training. You know, he was Babe Ruth. That was immediately what came to my mind was Babe Ruth when I was reading the scripture. Strict training. I thought he didn't do anything strictly except party. Strict is a matter of personal conviction. I'll do all I can do, but I've got a family at home. One of these girls that, one of the skiers had a baby since the last time she was in the games. She got married and had a baby. So her husband, and he was also an Olympic athlete, so there was limitations on what he could do to help. But she did everything that she could possibly do. So, but she couldn't do as much as a woman who was not married or did not have a baby. So their idea was strict, came down to the same words, I'll do everything I can do. But they were different levels. Yeah, if I don't have a job, I can train harder than that guy.
Yeah, easily.
Okay, so it has to be a relative thing. But they both are doing the best they can possibly do. All right, let me keep going. It's a relative term. The prize, he says, runner seeks, the prize the runner seeks is a crown of celery. I'm never going to forget that. That's so awesome. A perishable crown, a crown that will not last. But the crown we seek is one of imperishable quality, one that will last forever. Now, we hadn't figured out what that is yet. Paul already has been assured of his own salvation. He's saved. The people of Corinth, we know Paul considers them to be saved also. People in the Corinthian church, they're saved. You and I are saved. So we all already have an everlasting reward. It's called salvation. We already have that. Paul already had it. They already had it. So what is it that they're going to get that they don't already have? He's still talking about, in spite of being saved, he still talks about you being in a race of some kind where you're going to win something. You don't know the answer yet. If you do, you got to keep it to yourself. We cannot lose we cannot lose it. So what kind of crown can Paul be talking about? To get the reward of salvation, all right, let's back up. To get the reward of salvation, how much training is required? None. Somebody read Ephesians 2, 8, and 9.
Ephesians. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not as a result of work, that no one should boast.
That is salvation. You got your salvation by faith through the grace of God as a what? As a gift.
Okay, Jan, I got it.
Scripture says it is a gift. Nobody trains for a gift or it would not be a gift. Okay, if I won the Olympics, other than it being a miracle, it would only come about through hard work, and surely I would boast about it because I fully deserve it. I won. I didn't win just by being born with the ability to do it. I won because I earned it. I worked at it, okay? The prize Paul is talking here is a gift. Read Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, and it is given a gift that we cannot, it is a gift so we cannot boast. To win the prize Paul is talking about requires training. So it cannot be salvation. We already have salvation. We already have it. That is not the reward he's talking about. Salvation is forever, but we already have it. He's saying you've already got it, but you still got to run this race. Keep going. So what's he talking about? In this training metaphor, verse 25. Verse 25, let me see, read it again. So what do you think we should long for at the end of your life? First thing you're going to say is what? I mean, I can guess what you're going to say. What do you long for as a Christian at the end of your life? To be with God. What is the next thing? That's going to be first. That's what we long for. That's what heaven is wherever God is. What is the very next thing? When you die and you step over into eternity, he's going to be waiting for you there. What do you want him to say to you? Well done what? Exactly. Oh, I'm going to cry. Matthew 25, 14 to 23. What we long for is the approval of Christ for a life well lived. Matthew 25, verse 14 to 23. I'm going to read all of it to you. 14 to 23. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The master left. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, I want you to underline that. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with the 2 talents came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done. He didn't get as much. He wasn't given as much, and he didn't get as much. But his master told him the same thing. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the guy with 1 talent comes along, and he's not very well received. We're not going to read that. But the guy is looking for approval by his master. he gets 5 talents, he goes and doubles it. The guy with 2 talents goes and doubles it. They both got the same reward. They didn't get a piece of the money. They got the approval of the master in this parable. Well done, good and faithful servant. Okay, but notice, after a long time, the master returned. It said in verse, I think it was 19. The master expected their faithfulness as stewards of what he entrusted them with. I've given you a job. Every one of you. I gave you 5. I gave you 2. I gave you 1. Some he might have given 3 to, and who knows, you know. The point is they got all different levels of responsibility from their master. All right. Paul is calling this approval of the master the prize or the crown. We run the race throughout our entire Christian life with faith and service to the master. Just the Christian life. The part that I'm talking about before your conversion is not part of the race. The race starts when you're converted. At the end of our life, we receive one reward. We receive our reward, and it's defined in 2 Corinthians 5, verses 6 through 10. Y'all flip over there. You don't get many chances to study this stuff, so we're going to do it. 2 Corinthians 5, verses 6 through 10. Therefore, we are always confident and know that as long as we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. 2 Corinthians, let me keep going. We live by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So we make it our goal to please Him. We make it our goal to please Him, whether we are at home in the body or away from it. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due him for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. While you are alive, while you are in the body, at the end of that time, when you are not in the body anymore, you're going to be evaluated. Your faithfulness, just like those guys in that parable, your faithfulness is going to be evaluated. And we're all going to be given different levels of expectations from God, things to do. But the idea is to recognize what His will is and to do it. And then at the end of your life is going to be evaluated. And at the judgment seat of Christ, and He's going to evaluate your life, the Christian part of your life, not the part before, because we already know the part before your conversion is dismal failure. And if you were judged on that, you'd go straight to hell when you die. That's not part of it. The good and the bad are going to be evaluated. What that means is we don't live perfect lives. What that means is we do some things He gives us better than others. Some things we do, some things we don't do at all. Sometimes we relate to our brothers well, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we tell the truth, sometimes we lie. Sometimes this, sometimes that. All of those pluses and minuses go in to our evaluation at the judgment seat of Christ, and based on the outcome, we get our reward. We're going to be told what we're going to do in heaven. And what my goal is for Jesus to tell me, well done, good and faithful servant. And that is what Paul's goal was. If you read through his talk, he talks about that, about winning the prize. And that is his prize, or his work that he has done. All right, let me keep going. The judgment seat of Christ. Oh, I'm sorry, jumping ahead. This reward is not based on our works, but on our faith. It's not. It's the things we did or what's evaluated, but it's evaluated based on our faith. If you look at these works are performed as a result of our faith. The things we do are done as a result of our faith. James 2:14 and 18 talks about that. We don't have to read it, but it's talking about faith without works is dead. faith without obedience is dead. You know, you can, you know, without obedience to God, you have to wonder what kind of faith you have if you can't be obedient. We know what obedience requires, and we're going to be we should be more obedient at the end of our life than we are at the beginning of our Christian walk. Because at the beginning of our Christian walk, I've said it, Blake, you hadn't been in here long enough to hear it, but you'll hear it many more times if you're here long enough. What I tell people is that we are the same 1 minute after our conversion that we were 1 minute before, because we don't know any other way to be, except that we've got the love of Jesus Christ in our life. Then this process of sanctification takes hold, and ideally, we're growing, getting closer to the Lord every day of our life. Sometimes we sidetrack, sometimes we get off the path, sometimes we surge forward. You've got all these pluses and minuses, and they're going to be evaluated at the judgment seat of Christ. The judgment seat of Christ occurs at the end of your life. It is only for believers. That's the thing you got to realize. It is only for believers. What is the other judgment? Yeah, but how do you get there? You got to go through a judgment to go to hell even. What's it called? I'll give you the abbreviation. GWTJ. It happens at the end of time. The great white throne judgment. If you knew nothing, Blake, and I put on the board great white throne judgment and judgment seat of Christ, you can go either place. Which one would you pick? Yeah, but you know what it is. If you didn't know what it is, you'd say, hey man, great white throne judgment, that sounds cool. I'm going to go over there. You don't want to go over there.
You don't want to.
No, you don't want to go over there. Well, I mean, I've got one more thing to say about it, and I'll say it in a minute. It's only for believers. Only our deeds demonstrated after our conversion are judged. Just the part of your life where you were living in a saved status. Every believer participates, and every believer receives some reward. You can look at one guy while you're every believer, even the ones where you look at them and say, I'm not even sure his faith was sincere. Even that guy is going to get some reward. I'll show you how I know. Our lives are evaluated based on the good and the bad, as 2 Corinthians puts it, and our reward in heaven is determined at that time. It is everlasting. Verse 26, let me read that. We're getting there. Verse 26 says this. Therefore I do not run like a man, running aimlessly. I do not fight like a man beating the air. The aimless runner, the man beating the air, these are lives filled with purposelessness. But they're saved people. They're in the race. They're saved people. They're in the race. Paul says, therefore, don't be this way. Enter into strict training. And that strict training is our faith. We want our faith to grow. And that's what he's talking about in his training business. The aimless runner and the boxing the air boxer are Christian in this metaphor, but they have no purpose for Christ, and they will be found wanting at the judgment seat of Christ. I had baptism today. One of the girls said this. When she was growing, she's 34 years old. Said for the first 33 years of her life, she claimed to be Christian, but I gave no time or energy to God, to the God of the Bible. That's an important way to put it. Probably did some kind of God, one of her own design. Said, I gave no time or energy to the God of the Bible. And she got saved. Now she has an unshakable identity in Christ. This guy that is running around aimlessly. See, I could look at her and I could say, she may be like the runner that was running around aimlessly. She may have been saved. but she had just not had a faith that grew at all. She saw herself as lost, so she probably was. But that's what I'm talking about. There's this strict training that we need to get into. I think back to the word wood, hay, and stubble. I want to read that to you. 1 Corinthians 3. We can go backwards a little bit. 1 Corinthians 3, verses 10 to 15. Oop, that's Romans. That won't work. Listen to this. But the grace of God has given me, I laid a foundation, and I don't know if it says it here, but it says it up above there. The foundation is Christ. That's what we're talking about. The foundation he talks about is Christ. He says, I laid a foundation as an expert builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should be careful how he builds, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, one foundation, which is Jesus Christ. There it is. Paul laid the foundation, and that is Christ. If any man builds on this foundation using gold, silver, and costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, or stubble, his work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each man's work. If what he has built survives, he will receive his reward. When we studied this chapter 3, I taught this on the same basis, and I probably went over to 2 Corinthians 6, verses 5 to 10 at the same time there, and every time I ever teach it, I'll use the same scripture. It's the judgment seat of Christ where he gets his reward. The work he does is evaluated. If it is burned up, he will suffer loss. He himself will be saved, but only as one escaping through the flames. Got flames nipping at your coat and tail. All right. The foundation was Christ, so the builders were both Christian. But the quality of their building was different. You had one guy using wood, hay, and stubble. You know what's going to happen if that's tested with fire. It's going to be burned up. It's not going to last. The other guy uses gold, silver, and precious stones. That implies that his work will be able to withstand the test of time. The one using wood, hay, and stubble makes it into heaven. I want you to notice that. He makes it into heaven. He's the guy you would look at and say, I don't see how he possibly could be saved. But I'm not the judge. Thank God, I am not the judge. The guy, even though the things he was doing was not good in relation to the other guy that was building, he was still saved, and he makes it in. He got some reward and made it in with the coat, flames nipping at his coattail as he got in. All right, I'm nearly done. The boxer and the runner did not have purpose, but they are still in the race, indicating they're Christian. But if you're in the race, in these metaphors, you're a Christian. Paul says, love for Christ and other people gives purpose to our Christian freedoms and an understanding of that purpose for the Christian freedoms we have. All right, verse 27 says this, and we'll be done. No, I beat my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. There it is. Paul is saved. He's got to be in some kind of race other than one for salvation. He's already got his salvation. Now he has to answer the call of Christ on his life. What do I do with it? What do you do with it? What do I do with it? Paul uses another metaphor of turning his body into a slave, meaning a slave for Christ. I understand God's will for his life, and understanding God's will for his life and living according to that will, his evaluation at the judgment seat of Christ will be great, and the prize he wins will be everlasting approval of Christ in heaven. In heaven, not on earth, in heaven. The Greek word translated disqualified, Paul said he didn't want to be disqualified, is Strong's word number 96, I wrote it up there. It can also be translated as unapproved. I like that one better than disqualified. Disqualified means you can lose something. And it may mean you can lose something that you thought you had. You know, he's saved, he's not gonna lose his salvation, but he's going along thinking he's like a strong believer. I can do anything, I'm free, I can do whatever I want, you know, well, you know, guys can say the guy's saved, he does understand to a certain extent what freedom in Christ means, but he didn't treat his brother very well, so he gets ticked for that one, all right? Using the word more appropriately means that such acts of faith for Christians are found to be wanting, not for complete disqualification from the race, but for purposes of determining an appropriate award in heaven. That's all I got. That's the best I